while we get sorted. Right, brilliant. I'm all sorted. I was too busy eating millionaire shortbread, and then suddenly went, oh my goodness, I need to be back over in the studio. Right, it's horrible weather out there today, so if you hear a few gusty noises, if that's why, the wind is blowing an absolute hoolie. So after the drought we had when we were starting to get concerned about running out of water, it's now just been constant rain again, and really, really windy. Like the poor peonies and everything in the garden are getting absolutely battered at the moment. So it's nice to have your back. Yeah, we had a couple of months off. April, we didn't do one in April, we didn't do one in May. April, just because of getting ready for Wonderwool, it just gets ridiculously busy. And then May, I was off doing a scent work course for a week with my dog. And again, just by the time I've got back from Wonderwool at the end of April, just kind of felt like I was running out of hours to do stuff. So let's just change the angles ever so slightly. Let's move you back a little bit. So yes, I decided, you know what, rather than worrying about trying to get everything done, we'll just have a little bit of time off, carry on doing all the things that need to be done, but just sort of take a bit of pressure off myself and not worry about having to sort out doing this bit of seasonal changes dying. But we're back for June. We've got a lovely summery colour palette. If I just logged on and tallied all the votes up to make sure we are all sorted for that. I need some kitchen roll for testing the colours. But yes, I've been in the studio. Let's get rid of those because they've got pink splattered all over them. I've been in the studio all morning getting some dyeing done for general shop stock. And then this afternoon, I meant to grab it and show you. I forgot to pick it up, but those of you that have been, those of you that have been around for a while will know what that means. If you can read backwards, I am in the middle of getting all the stuff for this year's Tour de Fleece sorted. So I've posted about it on various bits of social media of what the crack is this year. There's going to be kind of two big options. There's the big option to do fibre every single day, and then I've got 4 different colour choices for you to have little chunks of same amount of fibre but just spread out more, so that you can kind of, if you know you're going to be really busy, or just because money's tight this month and you sort of can't afford to buy the whole lot but still want to take part, those will be ready. Waiting for, I've got one last batch of fibre I'm waiting for. As soon as that gets delivered, I can get it online. I need to chase them up. They told me, oh, email us on Friday and we'll let you know what's going on. I'm just like, oh, I need the fibre. No, thank you. I ordered it in the middle of April. But that seems to be the way of things at the moment. Of everything takes forever and everything costs twice as much. But we shall survive. Right. I need some more jugs. And I need a few more bits to dispense dyes into. Let's do some playing around with some colour. Right, really close between Dragonfly and this one, which is the winner, which is Zinnia. So we've kind of got a buttery yellow, a very pale pink, a mauvey dusky lilac, a just off white that's got a bit of a hint of green to it, and a minty green. Again, those of you who've watched these lots of times know that there is a method about how I go about doing these, which is I nearly always start off with either the darkest colour or the lightest colour. We're going to start off darkest first, which is a lilac colour. It's a lilac that's got an awful lot of red in it, so none of the colours in the pack this month are going to be particularly dark toned. So I'm not going to need, cooperate with me, I'm not going to need massive quantities of dye for any of this. So my very handy dispensers work really well when I'm doing big batches and I want to do large quantities of dye. But when I only want little bits and pieces, it's easier just to pull off the smaller amounts and then use that for mixing it all up. So then I use measuring syringes to pull off smaller quantities. So we're going to start off with this mauvey lilac colour. It's quite red, it's quite brown, it's got very little green in it. It's going to be the darkest colour in our pack, so it needs to have enough depth of colour to give us a contrast with the other shades. If we make it too pale, it's just going to disappear. So right, let's start off with 10 of you. Your rubbishy syringe. Sometimes the syringes get the plastic bits just start to get worn out, and instead of actually pulling up and measuring all the quantity that I want, they don't make a good enough airtight seal. That's probably okay. Right, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So that's an equal part of red. Colour off the end of here. This is an equal parts of red and a grey that I use. That is actually a very pale blue. So it looks really dark. It's a little bit too red. So it needs fractionally more grey in there. It's going to be much paler than that because I'm going to be diluting this down with water to get it to where we want it to get. I nearly forgot on the notebook, because this is the first batch that I dye to create the recipe, and then I will carry on dyeing more throughout the month. So therefore I need to know how much dye I've used. So we're actually going to put a little bit more grey in there, because although I want it to be a more red toned of grey, what I don't want to do is I don't want to make it too red. It's very definitely a shade of purple. So I've just stuck some water in there just so I can better see what the colour now looks like. So that's where we're at with that one. So the bottom one was the first one I did. It's too red. I've then added a bit more of the grey toned in it. Oh God, splatter red dye everywhere. I think what I'm going to do is, I know I'm going to want some of this pink dye, but this pink dye is like really, really strong, but I want a little bit more. I don't want to try and put more red in there. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use some of this pink instead of the red, and that's just going to sort of turn it a little bit pinker, but just liven it up a little bit. Some of that there. Right, I'm happy with that. Let me grab a fresh piece of kitchen roll, because that bit is rubbish. I've splattered a little shed load of stuff on it. Let's try that again. Turn his little drops. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Let's clean that off. So, honestly, right, ignore the big grey spot at the bottom. That's old and leaked. So there, that's where we are with our purple colour. So I'm happy with that. That's actually going to be our darkest shade. All the others are going to be much, much, much paler than that. Let's do our pink, seeing as how pink is the colour that I've just reached out. So, oh, wakey wakey. Our pink is that shade that is there. So this is going to need not so much dye, but it still needs to be darker than like the pale almond colour. But we need to not use too much. Right, let's try 5 and 2. Now pinks are just diluted red, effectively. Although that dye is called pink, in order to get it to be a pink that like that one, I basically need to use red and dilute it down. And it's surprising how little dye you need in order to get these colours to be pale enough. Now this I think is just going to be a little bit too sort of primary toned. Let's have a look. So we are. It's a very pretty pink, but because this hot pink is really, really bright, it's just a little bit highlighter coloured. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to soften it ever so slightly by using the tiniest amount of brown dye. There we go. Making sure to write it down. And it won't necessarily look massively different, but what it's done, so can you see how it's just taken kind of, it's not quite so highlighter pink anymore. Bear in mind when this colour's wet, it looks darker than it will look like on fibre. So it will be fractionally paler than that, but it is still going to have enough contrast with our lilac-y purple. Right, let's do our yellow. So let me grab my yellow dye and just give it a little bit of a mix up. This is one of the dyes because it tends to not stay dissolved very well. It forms a bit of a sediment when left to its own devices for too long, so you just have to give it a really good mix up. Not that. Let's do it into that one. Right. Okay. So that's my yellow. So this is a yellow that's a very, very warm toned yellow. Now, if I just use this yellow colour all by itself, it just looks, it's a really primary shade basically. I'll show you what I mean. It's fine. It's just not the same as the yellow in that palette. So that's that pure yellow, and it's the warmest yellow that I have. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put some bits of colour into it just to warm it up a little bit. Write that down. Right. Start off with less, because we can always add more. So I've just put some red in there. So yellow plus red makes an orange, which is sort of what this colour is kind of heading towards being. And can you already see that's already a better colour shade? It's for what we're after in this colour palette. So if I bring that round again for you to see. So can you see how that yellow at the top there is actually nearly verging onto what you could describe as orange? Do I want to put anything else into there? I am going to put one more red into there. It's 10, not 5. So I just went, had a moment and went, how much of that yellow dye did I actually use? And luckily, because the dispenser pulls off 20 millilitres, I can check what's left in the syringe and go, ah, yeah, that's how much is left in there, because there's 15 in the syringe, there's 25 there, so it was 10 of daffodil. Right, do I want to put any brown in this one as well? The problem when I just use the primary colours is that they end up looking really garish and stand out massively in the packs. They just look too, particularly with the yellows, they kind of just dominate. So I am just going to put, again, the tiniest fractional bit of brown in there, because it just takes that harsh primary edge off them. There we go, that's better. So we've kind of gone through the colour evolutions there. So we've got the yellow straight out with first batch of red, second batch of red, and then the final one, which has got the red and the tiny little brown bit of brown in there, and it just stops it from being such a harsh glaring colour, because it's quite a soft muted colour palette. It's not got anything particularly shouty about it. It's all very gentle, or very pretty. Right, greens. Greens are pesky if you mix them from blues and yellows, because particularly in these pale concentrations on fibres, they tend to split out. If you tend to get blue and you tend to get yellow, just because of the way the dyes respond to the heat and the fact that blue and yellows have such different fixing temperatures. So we are going to go, sorry, crashing and banging and walloping. Just get rid of you. We're going to go and we're going to have some of this colour. So this is a really, really bright, any of you who've watched these before will have seen me use them. This is a really, really bright jade green. It's far too, like, in your face for this particular colour palette. But it's a good starting point if we don't use too much of it. So we're doing the bottom mint green first. Let's do 3 of you. Write that down before I forget it. And then the other colour I've pulled off is the other green that I use, because by itself, let's have a little bit of water so you can see what I mean. Right, that's that jade green by itself. Okay, it's a lovely colour, utterly wrong for this particular colour palette. But if I put, no, that's black. Let's try. Little bit of, this is an olive green. Let's see where we get to. Okay. So I've put some of the olive green into it, which has given me this shade here. Let me have a look and see how I feel about that. I think that might be right. I think that's going to be, once that's dry, so remember wet colours are always darker. I think that's actually going to be the colour we want. Possibly needs a tiny little bit more water in there, so it's going to be a little bit paler. Right, that finally leaves this almond colour that's in there. So it's this one, that one. Okay. That is basically going to be almost our white fibre with the tiniest splash of dye. And I think with the tiniest splash of dye is actually going to be the olive green. And it's just going to be enough to turn our fibre not white. Because that's effectively what that colour is. It's a colour that is just not quite right. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's going to work. And I think it matches quite nicely, even if it's not a perfect match on the colour palette, it matches the colours in there. So you might not even be able to see it. It's this bit that's smeared just on there. So it's the tiniest, tiniest, tiniest hint of dye. Right. Let me move that out of the way before I chuck any more dye on it. Let me find you a clean piece of kitchen roll. So I'm going to show you what this all looks like as a set of colours, because we've gone through, that patch has got all the different colour permutations. So we have got a very, very palest colour. These are going to be different order than on the swatch. That's the minty green. That's the yellow. That's the pink. And that's the dark purple. Okay. Right. So there we go. That's what we've ended up with. So we've got the very pale yellow, the mauvey purple, the pale pink, the pale green, and then the colour that's just going to give us our faintest hint of off-white. The yellow looks quite strong at the moment. It didn't have masses of dye in it. Yellows are often one of those colours that I find it's really hard to judge them in the dye form. So any of you who've been around as I've been doing this for however many years will know that I often say I'm going to put the yellow on the fibre, I'm going to look at it when it's dry, and I'm going to decide if it's right or not, or whether I need to remix it and do a fresh one. And it tends to be yellows that are the ones that are the most likely I have to do that with. What I'm not certain about is whether this yellow is too dark that it's going to dominate this when you look at them as a set of colours, whether it's just got too much intensity to it. I have got the option that basically I can halve the dye quantity and tone down the colour palette a little bit. So we'll see what it looks like when it's on fibre, when it's dry. Fibre. There we go. So yeah, no, New Puppy is very good in the studio, apart from buckets of wet fibre. She's actually relatively trustworthy, where she's learnt what she is and isn't allowed to have. But a bucket of wet fibre that she can just reach into and grab something out of, she's just like, oh, the best fun in the world. So that's the only thing I have to really watch out for, is that's what she will attempt to take a grab out of if I'm not super careful. So this is our palest colour, the one that is white but barely so. And the other thing also to note is that I'm looking at the colours on white kitchen roll. The Cambrian wool is a little bit, it's not a white, it does have a little bit of a creamy hint to it. And I'm just trying to make sure that we get some dye spread around all the way through it, because actually the palest colour sometimes can be the hardest to get reasonably even, because the dye, there's so little dye there, the colour basically almost sticks to the wool almost instantly, particularly once the citric acid's gone on. So we're just going to give that one last quick squidge through. But yeah, so if I squeeze the water out of this, there's kind of it's almost running clear all by itself. It still needs heat setting. I'm just going to roll it up nice and tight, so it basically almost steams in its own little packet. Next bit. Lay that out. So they've just been in soak in some water with a little bit of washing up liquid in, just to help make sure they get thoroughly wetted out. Right, this is the minty green. I'm just trying to spread the dye around as evenly as possible. They kind of need to be wet, but not super soggy wet. Otherwise the dye just pools all down to the bottom of the little cling film packet. And providing you squidge, because it's cold, it's a really gentle way of dyeing fibre, much gentler than a method that's got lots of water, where the agitation of the water heating up by itself just felts the fibre. So it's pretty much the only method that I use now. Right, that's our minty green. So I also need its citric acid. So these are what are called acid dyes. Acid basically referring to they need acidic conditions for the dyes to form a bond onto the fibre. Some people use vinegar, but it's easier and more economical for me to use citric acid, which I buy in big bulk powdered form and just mix up into a solution. Reduces the quantity of liquid that needs to be transported around. I can just buy it as a powder and then make it up to the concentration that I want, and it also doesn't smell, unlike vinegar. So that's our green. So citric acid is basically lemon juice. It's in shed loads of different food. If anybody uses bath bombs, it's in that. So, and the dyes themselves, they make nice, usually pretty stable bonds onto the fibre. The blues can be a little bit tricky sometimes. That was our green. This is our ambery yellow. But the blues can be a little bit like, it's why you get the advice about when you buy new jeans, it sort of says specifically, do not sit on pale coloured upholstery. And they just make less stable bonds with everything, and particularly abrasion resistant, which of course if you're spinning, it's a little bit of a pain. Oh, that's better on the fibre. That doesn't look quite as horrendous. So this is the yellow that I was having a bit of a worry about. It looks much better kind of spread out onto the fibre. It's nowhere near as dark as it looked on the piece of kitchen roll. So I think I'm actually going to be okay with that one. So, citric acid again. Give it a good squidge. Make sure it's in all the right places. Roll it up nice and tight. So yellow. And then we've got the pink and the purple left. So I've got a couple more bits of fibre to dye from what I was dyeing this morning. I was dyeing some of the textured sari silk blend. And I've got most of it done, but I still need to do a tiny bit more. And then this afternoon I'm going to crack on with printing bags. So I'm sure at some point I'll put a social media post up revealing what this year's little printed bag design was. I did the carving of the block yesterday whilst I had a gap in between classes teaching dog training. So that was handy. And then I will get the printing inks out, get the first batch of bags printed up, get everything packed apart from the fibre that I'm still waiting to arrive, and then as soon as that's arrived, they'll be ready and up for sale as the first batch, and then we will go from there. And basically I'll just carry on making batches of fibre up right up until it's not going to reach you in time anymore. But yes, I think there's 21 new colours of the superfine merino and silk, and they are grouped into sets of 5. So there are 4 different colour palettes. And for each one, I've got little colour hints as to what each theme is going to look like. So you'll know that if you don't like red, you'll know which ones to avoid. If you don't want bright colours, then that's not going to, this palette won't be the one for you. If you're getting the entire lot, they'll still all work as a collection of colours in the way that I've planned them out, but they'll also work as little mini sets of 5, and then everybody's getting a neutral to start off with, because there's 21 race stages, so therefore I needed 21 colours. So that's 4 sets of 5 plus then I needed another fibre, so I was like, well, if we do a nice neutral colour, that will go with everybody's and work out really nicely. And then as we go along each day of the race, there will be posts up in the Fellowship of Yarn, a little bit about the areas that the race is going through, and a little bit about the inspiration for the name of that fibre, some bits of history, interesting tidbits, and then we do little participation random draws for those of you who take part. If you're using any Hilltop Cloud fibre, it doesn't just have to be the team fibre that I've made each year, and each day any spare fibre of the merino silk goes up online for anybody to buy. And basically once the limited edition fibre is gone, it's sold out, it's not going to be there anymore. So we are all done. Right, yellow, pink, purple, green and almond. So let's have a look. Right, that is what our colour palette was that we'd chosen as our winner this year, what it looks like. And here is what we've ended up with. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really pretty fun spin, and I think I can see, I like colour work and things, there's lots of ideas about how you could manage to use that. There's lots of colour combinations that I think are really interesting together. So yeah, good choice, people. I'll get that up online, so it'll be dyed today. I'm out tomorrow. Monday I'll be taking photos of stuff and this will go up online. So the first batch there, and then I'll always say that if you decide, oh yes, I do want some and it's sold out, you can just send me a message and I will make sure in the next batch that I dye during June there will be a little bit more. Yeah, I'll make sure to send you an invoice for your allocation of the packs from the next dyeing batch. But yeah, thank you for coming along. I shall see you all hopefully in July. I can't see, well, end of June, ready to dye the July colour. Remember, if you want to come and get a chance to vote on the colours, it all goes up in the Fellowship of Yarn each month. But yeah, lovely seeing you all again, and I shall see you all in end of June to when we're going to dye the July colour.